How you doing, Gills fans? Welcome back to Gills in the Blood TV for my first question and answer session of the season. Obviously, with myself not travelling to Portsmouth due to knee surgery and missing out on a third consecutive trip to Fratton Park, I thought I would do this Q&A session to make sure that the channel has still got content going out, and I think they're really interesting to do. And 12 games in pretty much represents a quarter of a way through the season, or thereabouts. So put a tweet out and a post on our Facebook page a few days ago, and we've got a decent amount of responses. So thank you to everyone who's come back to us with questions. Looking forward to getting through them. Got some from Twitter, some from Facebook, like I say. Some sort of overlap, so we'll probably try and answer them as one, rather than just going over the same ground twice. But yeah, there's a good varied range of subjects. So I'm going to crack straight on. I'll go to the Twitter page first. First one on Twitter come from Ali Gills 10, and he asked me, after watching us play 11 games and regularly seeing us live, do you still think we'll finish around your pre-season prediction of 9th? Yes, is my word and my one-word answer for you, Ali. I think we will. I think the table doesn't lie, predominantly. You cannot dress it up and pretend that you should be anywhere else other than where you are, because the reason you're there is because you've got a certain amount of points and you've won a certain amount of games. And frustratingly, we chucked away a couple of 2-goal leads at the early part of the campaign, and people can say that, yeah, that maybe does put us in a slightly false position, but it doesn't, because we didn't see out them games and we ended up drawing 2-2 with Tranmere and Blackpool when we should have won. But thankfully, we seem to have ironed out them issues. I think defensively, we look okay. We've had probably only one game where we've been awful. That was Oxford away. Aside from that, we've been in every league fixture. We've been in every cup fixture as well, apart from Ipswich. I think if you look at the Carabao Cup defeat to Newport, we should have probably won that. Colchester, same problems as early part of the season in the league. Defensively, we switched off and got punished 3 times. But going the other way, we looked all right. But yeah, at the moment, I think we're probably, in terms of quality and quantity, short for any sort of push towards the top 6, the playoffs, or any sort of dreams of promotion. But I don't see a season where we'll be in any type of danger. I don't think we're going to be looking over our shoulder at all. We're currently, 14 points after a dozen games, and currently well clear of the bottom 3 as it is, because it's not a bottom 4. So I think with more games and potentially additions in January, if we can get a couple of good signings in just to boost the group, then I think we'd be absolutely fine. Obviously, that could change if those that are on loan only until January have to go back, then we might have a problem. But as it stands, I will stick to my pre-season prediction, and I will say, yes, I think we're finishing in around 9th position. Right, go over to the Facebook page now. First one on there was from Mark Thornwell, who asked, do the majority of our fans get too excited in pre-season? After example, the Charlton win, should we accept each season is about finding 4 teams worse than us? I'm not sure what you mean by too excited. I don't think, personally, I haven't been too excited, I don't think. You see the odd tweet, tongue-in-cheek, I'd imagine, saying Steve Evans' promotion party and the such, but that happens every pre-season, regardless of who's the manager, I think, and it swiftly changes after a few league games, especially with us. I thought Charlton was a very good win back in the summer against a good side that are doing all right in the Championship, and against an outfit that were nearly at full strength that day back at the Priestfield in July. So it was a good performance, but it's not one that's going to define our season, in the same way that the Oxford defeat at the end of September is not going to define our season the other way. It doesn't mean because we got bashed 3-0 and had an off day that we're going to get relegated, and beating Charlton 3-1 in the summer didn't mean we was going to win the league at a canter. I don't agree with having to find 4 teams worse than us every season. I thought that became a little bit monotonous. Every summer, the chairman trotting out, first aim is to get to 50 points. I think it's nice to show a little bit more ambition, but within reason, of course. And I know plenty of people have jumped on Steve Evans and said, oh, he said we was going to get into playoffs. Well, Steve Evans didn't say we were going to get into playoffs. He said it'd be nice to aim for the playoffs and the top 6. but he never guaranteed that we were going to get anywhere near it. And like I've just answered in the previous question, I don't think we will. I think we're probably a little bit of quality short at the moment. But I think there's plenty of teams worse than us in League One at the moment. And I think with more games together, because we have to remember this is a new group, I think we'll be absolutely fine. And I think we'll finish with more points and in a higher position than we did last season under Steve Lovell. And that's no dig at Steve Lovell at all. I just think that looking at the squad man for man, we might be short of numbers slightly, but I think in terms of quality, we've got more as a whole. Obviously, we're still missing a Tom Eaves, but they're very hard to find. But no, I personally didn't get too excited, I don't think, with pre-season. And I mean, you have to ask individual fans that. I suppose it's a tricky one to answer for a whole fan base, which I can't do. But in terms of myself, no, I didn't want to get too excited and too ahead of myself, because then you end up setting yourself up for disappointment. But at the same time, I certainly don't think it's just a case of looking around us and hoping that there's 4 teams or 3 teams this season that are worse than us, because I think there's plenty of teams that are worse than us, and I think we'll be absolutely fine in mid-table this season. Next question on Facebook, we'll stay and do another one on there, is from Stephen Udall. Thank you, Stephen. He asked, if I could buy one ex-Gillingham player for the current team, who would it be? Should have sat down and looked through these questions before doing this live, shouldn't I? A bit more research, Matt. I suppose if you're looking at our current team and what we need, I would say Bob Taylor. Proper number 9, proper goal scorer, proper finisher, as pure a hitter of a football as I've seen watching the Gills. Never seen someone strike a ball so well, either with the sides instep or on his laces. And yeah, I think if you could add Bob Taylor to this current team, I think we'd finish somewhere in the top 6, I'd say. So yeah, that would be my answer, Bob Taylor. But there's plenty of other very, very good footballers who we've had down the years since I started watching and before that would definitely boost our current squad. But looking at where we are and what we probably need at the moment, yeah, that'd be my pick, Super Bob. So cheers for that, Stephen. Right, we'll go back to Twitter for the next one. Third and Goal, Twitter handle @inverted27. Who would be your player of the year, disappointment and surprise of the season so far, both for Gills and in general? It's a good question. I like that. I think player of the year for us in terms of Gills is tricky. I think there's a few that have just started to hit some really good form. I think if you go right back to the start of the season, Alfie Jones stood out. Alex Jakubiak stood out. Since then, since we've moved Alfie Jones into the middle of the park, I think Connor Ogilvy's been immaculate at centre-back. Mark Byrne, since getting himself back in the side, is back to the Mark Byrne that won Player of the Year a couple of seasons ago. Boundless energy, never stops running, never stops tackling, never stops working hard. Brandon Hanlon, I love him to bits. I don't think I can remember a striker working as hard in a Gillingham shirt. Might not be the finished article by a long way. Might not score you loads of goals, but I think in terms of work rate and desire and wanting to do well and wanting to improve and all that type of thing, he's been absolutely first class. And Jack Bonham, the keeper, in the last few weeks has started to really excel. Saturday's draw at Portsmouth made 3 or 4 really good stops. Prevented a bigger hiding at Oxford a couple of weeks ago. Was solid at home to Southend when we needed him to be. And yeah, 3 clean sheets now for Jack, which is 1 in 4, which would equate to about 12 clean sheets throughout a league season. Wouldn't be a bad return. It's not quite how many he got at Bristol Rovers last season, but there is still room for improvement. So yeah, there's a few I think that have held their hand up and started to really put in a good shift in terms of putting themselves in contention at this early stage. In terms of disappointment, I'm disappointed we've not seen Bradley Garmston more. I think he could still offer us something, but obviously Steve Evans and Paul Rayner see him in training every day and have decided for whatever reason that he's not for them. So we have to get on with it. And in terms of new signings, probably Lee Hodson has not been as good as we'd hoped. Hasn't managed to get himself in the starting 11 as much as he probably wanted. Same could be said for Usinu Cisse. I thought when he came along and we saw him first day at Donny, he was going to be everything that we needed in the middle of the park. But that's credit to others like Mark Byrne and Alfie Jones who've got into centre midfield, and now Stuart O'Keefe as well starting to come into his own. So there's a couple that we've been slightly disappointed with. Surprises of the season, Alfie Jones, not because he's been good, but because he's been so good. I think I said a few weeks ago, and I was on a match day live to Boz and Stocky, and I said it on a Monday review afterwards. I think this kid will be playing Premier League within 2 years for Southampton. He's got all the tools to be a very, very good holding midfielder in the Premier League. And you look at England's problems in there at the moment, and he is English, I think. Not that I'm saying he'll play for England, but you look at comparing sort of relative players in that position, and Declan Rice's and Harry Winks, and I think he's got all the ability to be as good as them based on what I've seen so far. In terms of the league as a whole, player of the year is tricky. Obviously, I don't see every player. Some that I've been very impressed with, Kane Vincent-Young for Ipswich was absolutely first class when he come down a few weeks ago and scored the winner for them. So yeah, I'd probably say him. He's one that's really stood out, I think. Disappointment, probably have to say Portsmouth at the moment. I know they've got games in hand, but if you look at the reaction from their fan base after Saturday's draw, devoid of ideas, devoid of creativity, slow, boring, lethargic, they were words. So you think with that squad and the manager that they've got and what he's achieved at this level, they should probably be doing a lot better than they currently are. And surprise package of the season so far, probably have to say Wickham. I don't think anyone, including their own fan base, would have had them up there at this stage. So fair play to Gareth Ainsworth and his chairman and his board and his coaching staff and his players. And you look at the people they got through the door in the summer, the Rolando Aarons and the Fred Onyedimnas and that such type of player, and be interesting to see if they can keep it up. And they might not, but it'd be a thoroughly entertaining watch, seeing how far they can go. So yeah, really good question, enjoyed that one, and that'd be my pick. So cheers mate for that. Luke Naylor after three, at Naylor94 on Twitter is the next one. After 3 wins from 14 competitive games, how do you rate Steve Evans' start? I think it's been all right. I think it's been frustrating at times. I think it's been really promising at times. I think there's plenty of potential within the group. Like I answered after the first question, again, the table doesn't lie, and we are where we are for a reason, but we have put in some really good performances. And yeah, like I said, we probably did deserve more out of the Blackpool game and probably more out of the Tranmere game. And if we maybe got to half time against Doncaster opening day, we might have seen that out. So we could invariably have a few more points, but we haven't, for reasons that we caused ourselves. And that's what I mean by frustrating. But like I've already said, I don't think we'll be in any danger this season. I don't envisage any type of relegation battle, any type of looking over our shoulder with concern throughout the campaign. And yeah, we have to remember what we have to do, I think, because it's Steve Evans and we knew what a divisive character he was when he first came to the football club, is we have to almost just forget that it is Steve Evans. We have to look at, take the name away and take the antics away. And in fairness, there's not been any antics really, have there, from him? He's had one spat with Paul Lambert, and it's not to say that it was Steve. I know a lot of our fans and Ipswich fans jumped on Steve's back and automatically decided that it was him, but I'm not sure it was. So I'm not going to sit here and have a pop at him or Paul Lambert because I don't know the full facts. But let's strip it away and forget that it's Steve Evans and Paul Rayner and look at the games and what they've done tactically and what they've done in terms of recruitment. And I think it's been really encouraging. I enjoy going to home games now. I look forward to a Saturday going to the Priestfield, which I don't think anyone's really done for the best part of 2 or 3 seasons since Justin Edinburgh, God rest his soul, left the football club. It became a chore. It became a fact of doing it because we had a season ticket and we didn't want to waste money. But no, I think he's got us playing the right way. I think we go front to back, from back to front quite quickly sometimes, but with a purpose. It's not just an aimless punt upfield trying to hit Tom Eves' chest or Tom Eves' head. I think we're trying to turn fullbacks and centre backs around, and when we've got the chance, we try to play it on the deck, and at times we've played some really good stuff this season. I mean, I missed Blackpool, but from all by all accounts from Stocky and Boz, we were superb throughout that game. Aside from the 5 minutes where we switched off, played some really good stuff against Bolton, Wickham, Ipswich, Southend, and people can say, oh yeah, you can only they're poor teams aside from Ipswich, but or maybe Wickham as well, but you can only beat what's in front of you. And I think we're going the right way. I think it's a little bit harsh to point to the win percentage at this stage because I think the performances have been good. I've enjoyed watching us play, and aside from Oxford this season, I thought even when we've been behind in games, I've sat there thinking, yeah, we can get back into this. So I'd say the 2 watchwords for me, Luke, would be frustrating and promising. So cheers, mate. Yeah, and a quick second question from you. Thank you very much. If I had to choose to wear a Swindon shirt or a Millwall shirt for one day, what would it be? Lovely stuff. It's like asking me whether I want Jimmy Savile or Rolf Harris to look after my kids for the day. Millwall. First one that comes to my head. I'm not going to enjoy either, am I? Let's be honest. So I've said Millwall. Right, back over to Facebook. I think we've got one from Cy Chaplin, which actually is similar to Luke's. So, as we had a freebie versus Bolton, are you concerned we seem in no better a position than last season? And he's quoted the statistics. These were obviously pre-Portsmouth, so we've got to add an extra game on now. So it's last season would have now been played 12, won 3, drawn. So 11 games. It was played 11, won 3, drawn 2, lost 6 last season. And this season it was played 11, won 3, drawn 4, lost 4. I think just looking at your stats side tells us that we're in a better position. I'm not sure how you think we're not, to be honest. I don't agree with this freebie thing against Bolton because regardless of whether we think it's right or wrong, the league ruling, we had to go out and play a Bolton side that was made up of them players. We still had to do everything that we needed to do correctly. And from whistle to whistle, we did. We played some really good stuff. We scored some really good goals and we thoroughly deserved the 3 points. It's not our fault that Bolton are having to play their kids. And we can only worry about what we've got to do on a Saturday at 3 p.m. And on that Saturday at 3 p.m, we had to play a Bolton side that contained them players. And we beat them, and we beat them really well. Wickham had a freebie against them apparently and only drew 0-0. So I don't think football's that black and white. You could say that Manchester United had a freebie in the League Cup a couple of weeks ago against Rochdale, got taken to penalties. Football isn't that simple. It's not as cut and dried as that. And we had to do a job that afternoon against Bolton and we did it. And we had to do a job against Wickham, a very good Wickham side coming into that game, and we did it. And we had to do a job against a struggling Southend side and we did it really well. And we had to play a good Oxford side and we didn't do our job. So we got beaten and got everything that we deserved, and that was absolutely nothing. So I don't buy into this freebie. That's what it is. That's who we had to play, and that's what we did, and that's what we beat. But looking at your stats, same wins, more draws, less defeats this season after 11 games, scored more, conceded less, more points. The football's better, in my opinion. The playing squad's better, in my opinion, if a little small. I'm enjoying going to watch football, like I've already said now, more than I have been for years. So not concerned at all that we're not making progress, because all the stats and all the figures that you've given me point to the fact that we are making progress. But yeah, thanks for the question. Right, I've got one on Twitter and one on Facebook that are pretty similar, so we'll answer them as one. And they came from Nathan Bolton on Facebook, who said, are our fans any more fickle than the rest of the 92? And Richard Gransden, Gransden85 on Twitter, if you want to go and follow him, said, do we have the worst fans for infighting, or do we just see it more? Seems worse than ever under Steve Evans. I'd imagine every single fan base up and down the land has those that fancy moaning, as those that want to label others snowflakes or whatever they like to call us on certain forums because we don't agree with them. We just obviously see more of it for our own football club because we tend to follow and interact with people that follow the same football team, which is Jules. So, like I've already touched on, the Steve Evans thing is boring now. It's not going to change until he leaves the football club. So we just get on with supporting the players that he's putting on the pitch on a Saturday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And all the while he's doing all right and he's picking up decent enough results and the football's all right to watch, then we crack on. I said right at the beginning when his name was linked, it wasn't a manager that I wanted to come to the football club, and I thought there were better options out there, not just because of his perceived history and what he's done, but because I thought there were younger football managers out there that were better suited to us, the likes of Paul Hurst and Darryl Clarks. But looking at their record in League Two at the moment, they're hardly tearing up trees. So Steve Evans has had a decent enough start for me, and infighting is pathetic, and I don't understand how grown adults can't have a debate about something without resorting to name calling. What do we get? We get nonce is a fashionable one. All the usuals, dickhead. See you next Tuesday gets chucked in. Why can't you just have a chat without resorting to that? That's not an opinion, is it? I mean, I'll sit down and have a chat with anyone, anywhere about Jules, and I appreciate that people have different opinions and that people have different thoughts on different things, and people hate Steve Evans or don't like Steve Evans or don't want Steve Evans at our football club or won't come and watch us while he's at the football club. That's fine. But when people ask you for a reason, back it up with a valid answer. And I'm not, you know, that's not all people. I'm just saying that's what I see on social media, and obviously running a Facebook page and a YouTube channel, we get it chucked at us quite a lot, and it's water off a duck's back these days. But people who think they're big and clever hiding behind a keyboard and calling people nonces and dickheads and all sorts of that, I think they need to look at themselves more than they need to look at the people they're arguing with. But I'd imagine it's rife within every fan base across the country. And like I say, we probably see it more because we all follow other Gills fans, don't we? So never please everyone all of the time, and you're always going to upset people. So is what it is. Not sure what else to say. Cheers Nathan and Rich for the question. I hope I've answered it as best as I can. Right, where do we go next? We will go back to Twitter, and one from Lee Clifton at FomBlog. Do you think the way you watch Gills has changed since you started vlogging? Can you compare it to how you viewed games before you started recording for the channel? It's a good question, Lee. I really enjoyed sort of thinking about that one, and I think the biggest thing that we try to do, myself and Boz and Stocky and whoever else is on there, especially when we're actually watching the game as opposed to the build-up or half-time analysis or talking at the end of matches, is we have to try and keep it as authentic as possible. And so what we've tried to do, especially since we was told we can't record footage, and I think that's been a blessing, because what we do now is, even though we've got the camera on us, we're not looking directly at it like I am now. I'm staring down the camera. So if we're watching the game, we're watching the football, looking away from the camera lens, so to speak, but still making sure that we're in shot. And the aim then is to get live reactions, to get genuine emotion and reaction to what's happening at that particular part of the game, whether that's a poor decision from the ref or a foul or a free kick or a goal. And if you can catch live goal reactions, it's the best feeling in the world, because you can't bottle that up. You can, if we're filming the game and we film the goal and then we try and flip the camera and celebrate, it's fake, and you're generating it, and it's canned and it's not authentic. So from that point of view, it's much better for us now that we keep the camera on us, and like I say, we're not looking directly at it, we are watching the game, because obviously if we're trying to run a channel and we're trying to provide analysis for people that can't be there, then we have to, you know, do it from what we see. And if we're not looking at the game properly, then obviously we're not giving valid analysis, and then it makes the channel pointless, so to speak. So yeah, it's not changed it too much, because we're still concentrating fully on the game. We just have a camera just sat out the way that's just obviously watching our reaction, so to speak. And I think, I don't know what you guys feel. Obviously, you give us the feedback and let us know. But from our point of view, we think it's a lot better now with filming us rather than the actual footage. I mean, the odd free kick or penalty we will go to and try and get that. But I think it's a lot better and works a lot better now that we can film us directly, because you get proper live reactions and proper authentic shots of football fans in football grounds. But yeah, really interesting question, Lisa. Thank you for that one, mate. Next one comes from Gills Les, which is Les Smith on Twitter, and he asked me best defender, best goalkeeper, best midfielder and best striker I've seen in my time watching the football club. Again, should have done some research. Right, there's probably going to be a theme, and I'd imagine these are probably all going to be around the era of the Tony Pulis and Peter Taylor teams that took us up from League Two, what it is now, to League One, to the Championship, and punched above its weight for a good few years. I think best goalkeeper that I've seen live, I would have to say Vince Bartram, closely followed by Stuart Nelson at his best. I think in terms of what you want from a keeper, Jim Stannard, this is so hard. I'd probably have to put Jim Stannard above Stuart Nelson, in fairness. So I'm going to say my best would be Vince Bartram. But from all three of them that I've mentioned, you get absolutely everything that you need from a goalkeeper: professionalism, dedication. They have to be a bit mad. They have to be a bit nuts. All were unbelievable shot stoppers. Distribution was decent. They would bellow at their back four like you wouldn't believe if they thought something wasn't being done right. And you have to look at the three of them, what they achieved. Vince Bartram got us promoted at Wembley. Stuart Nelson won a League Two title with us. Jim Stannard got us promoted out of League Two in 95-96 with one of the best defensive and clean sheet records you're ever likely to see. So yeah, they'd be my top three, but I'd have to just go towards Big Vinny as my best. In terms of defenders, there's plenty again. John Egan, at the start of his career, you just knew straight away that he was going to go on and do what he's doing, and that's playing the Premier League, captain his country. He's got everything you need to be a modern day centre-back, and I think he'll only continue to improve. Barry Ashby, Guy Butters, Simon King, who unfortunately had his injury career cut short by injury. There's plenty. Who else? Who was centre-backs in? Richard Green was a good centre-half when Pulis first arrived. But I think for me, the best one that I've seen, and probably for longevity and just being that good and playing consecutive games, Chris Hope, an absolutely phenomenal centre-half who played a huge part in us at the turn of the millennium when we were punching well above our weight in the Championship, and he was helping us see off the best that division had to offer at the time. And didn't he twice set the record for a run of consecutive games, about 170 without missing a football match, is absolutely phenomenal. Testament to his strength of character, his fitness, his ability to not get sent off or injured. So yeah, best defender Chris Hope. Best midfielders are, if you look at recent ones, Bradley Dack, phenomenal. Gone on to do what we thought he'd do, and I think he'll still continue to improve. Dave Martin, proper old school skipper in that 95-96 side that did everything you're not allowed to do now. Just kick people up in the air. Wasn't afraid to take a booking or a red card. Wasn't afraid to get injured. Real muck and nettles type of centre midfielder and proper leader. Paul Smith, Mark Saunders, Nicky Southall, Johnny Hodge. There's loads. But for me, there's only ever going to be one in that position, and that's Mr. Gillingham, and that's Andy Hessenthaler. And I don't need to sit here and tell you what Hesse was all about. Hesse was Hesse. He was a phenomenon. To play at that level at that age and to be that good was just speaks absolute volumes for the bloke. And there's no one else for me. It has to be Andy Hess. And striker, I think I've already mentioned him, but there's loads again to go through. And I think there's another question about strikers in a little while, so I'll talk about them more in depth there. But has to be Bob Taylor. And it wasn't long enough, and we know that. And he never really hit the heights after he left us, which was a bit sad. And he came back on loan and it didn't work. And unfortunately, his career fizzled out due to injuries with his calves. But for that 18 months, 2 years that we had him, he was an absolute genius. Like I say, left foot, right foot, header, set pieces, volleys, 6-yard goals, 18-yard goals, outside the box. He could do the lot. And I think for a bloke back 20 years ago who for the last 20 games or whatever, give or take, was going over a goal a game is absolutely phenomenal. So that's my 4 picks, but there's plenty of others. Cody McDonald, Adi Akinbaye, Ife Anora, Danny Kedwell, Tom Eaves, Carlos Saba, Leo Fortune West. So many good players that we've had, but my 4 picks would be goalkeeper Vince Bartram, defender Chris Hope, midfielder Andy Hessenthaler, and striker Super Bob Taylor. Really good question, Les, and it just sort of makes you remember that we have had some very good footballers down the years, and we're not as crap as we like to make out. Right, back to Facebook. How many we got left? We've only got a few left, so we'll keep going through these. Greg Lewis asks, who would be your player of the year so far? And his own pick is Conor Ogilvie. I think that's a really good shout. Like I mentioned right at the top of the video, since he's got back in at centre-half alongside Max Amar, he's been really, really good. And he can play as well. Let's not forget that. He's a good ball playing centre-back. He's not just a Gabriel Zakwani type or a throwback centre-back who's just going to edit and tackle and clear it. He's comfortable on his left foot. He's comfortable enough on his right foot. And being left-footed, it gives us balance alongside Max Amar. And both of them can play. Both of them are decent enough with their feet, which is great at this level. But for me, it's tricky. There's a few, like I mentioned right at the beginning. Alfie Jones has been immaculate. Alex Jakubiak started like an absolute express train. Brandon Anlin been brilliant. Conor Ogilvie's got better and better. Jack Bonham's come right into his own. Mark Burns been superb. I'm just going to have to stick with, probably because he's done it for the whole campaign generally, is Alfie Jones at the moment. He would be my player of the year, centre-back or centre midfield. I think he's probably had one poor game, and that was Oxford. And there's rumours that he was still under the weather. And Mahat Pat shouldn't have played because he missed the Ipswich game the week before due to concussion. So my player of the year so far is Alfie Jones. But there is a few that are breathing down his neck now, which can only be a good thing for us. Back to the strikers again on Twitter from Joe Collett Cramp. Thank you, Joe. Of these, which two in their prime would you play up front as a pair? Carlos Sala, Bob Taylor, Ifianora, Marlon King, Cody or Adi Akinbaye? You missed out Leo and you missed out Danny Kedwell. Bob Taylor has to be one, 100%. I'm going to look up here. You can't see it. If you look here on the video, that's my table plan from my wedding a couple of years ago, and I picked it based on my best Jules 11, and I sat on the top table with my wife. Robert Taylor on table 4, which is your answer, would have to be Adi Akinbaye, who was an absolute dream to watch when he arrived for what, 200,000 from Norwich winter to 1997, I think, and helped us stay up that season. Season after that very nearly helped us get in the playoffs. He had the lot. He had pace to burn like you would not believe. I mean, people talk of quick players now, but I'd love to have seen him in a foot race with some of the modern day quicks. He was huge. He was an absolute tank. You didn't get him off the ball. If you gave him half a yard, you weren't for catching him. Again, he could finish with both feet. He could finish with his head. Well-deserved move to Bristol City and Wolves after that, where he done really well and earned himself a shot at the Premier League. Didn't quite work out for Addy after that, but I think it's always good to see when you've got a player that you get in for little or no fee and goes on and you sell him on for a bigger fee and he does well at higher levels, and Addy definitely did that. So that would be my 2 picks, and it probably seems very harsh because you can make a case for all the others, but yeah, I couldn't steer away from Super Bob Taylor and Adi Akinbaye. I think it would have been quite fun to watch them in tandem. Yeah, so thank you, Joe. Right, where do we go next? We go back to Facebook. What we got on here? We've done that. So we've got 2 left on Facebook, and we've got 2 left on Twitter. So we will go Anthony Agate, I think is that how you pronounce it, on Facebook, who asked me top 5 players since watching the Gills. I'll have to look back up there again. Back at this. Bob Taylor's one, Hesse's another. Chris Hope, Taylor, Hess, Hope. Addy, Akinbaye and Nicky Southall. That's my 5. But if I sit here for 30 seconds, I'll change my mind. And then if I say it for another 30 seconds, I'll change my mind again. So that's it. What did I say? Bob Taylor, Andy Essenthaler, Chris Hope, Nicky Southall, Adi Akinbaye. Right, there's my top 5. Right, move on before I change my mind. Right, 1 left on Facebook, so we'll leave that for a minute. We will go back to Twitter. James Hawkins asks, what do you think of the fan reaction on social media after certain Gills games? Never seen it as bad as under previous managers. I think what James is getting at here is the Steve Evans effect again, and the fact that we knew he was going to be a divisive character when he took the job. I think some of it's ridiculous, James, and I think I touched on that earlier in the video, didn't I? I think have an opinion by all means. Have a disagreement with individuals by all means, but do it in an adult way without resorting to name calling and all that petty nonsense, because we're meant to be adults, and maybe I'm old. I don't find it cool or hard or whatever you want to call it by thinking, oh, let's call someone a name and let's get our mates to call people the same name as well. I don't know what that achieves and keeps them happy, then fair enough, I suppose, but each to their own, but it's not for me. But yeah, again, I suppose we know why it's probably more heightened and more aggressive at the moment, and that's because it is Steve Evans, and we know that he had to come in and he had to hit the ground running in terms of results and performances because of the fact that he did have past with us, and a lot of our fans weren't happy with his appointment. But I've not seen anything too untoward from Steve. Like I've said plenty of times, aside from the Paul Lambert incident, I don't think there's been anything too bad. Nothing more than you'd want to see from any other manager. And at the moment, it seems that because it's Steve Evans, if he does something, we use it as a stick to beat him with. And if it was another manager, we'd be saying, oh yeah, great, he's showing some passion on the touchline. So you can't have it both ways. I don't get, there was a thing the other week, people moaning that they were calling Steve Evans gaffer. He is the gaffer. Get over yourselves. Jesus, go and get a hobby. You know what I mean? It's pathetic. Just trying to find any tiny thing, like when clubs tweeted, like last season, the club would tweet a team lineup. Oh, new manager. It's boring. What does it achieve? Do you think that the club's going to interact with you if you start tweeting nonsense to them every 5 minutes? Of course they're not. Do you think the club will interact with fans more if you just send them abusive tweets? No. Do you think they will do more for fans if you just put Scully out, Rayner out, Evans out, 20 years of lies and broken promises and all that all the time for the sake of it? No. I don't get it. I get people are frustrated and I get people want us to be better, but it's all right singing at games. We want Scally out. Steve Evans is a fat Scottish doodah. But what's the master plan after that? And I look round at games and I see kids singing this and I think, you don't know anything about the history of Paul Scally or the club or anything like that. So why are you singing? And maybe they have done their research and fair play, but I wouldn't put money on it. And I think, like I've said in answer to a previous question, we have to strip back the fact that it is Steve Evans and Paul Rayner at the moment and just look at it as this is a person or two persons, people, in charge of our football club on the managerial side. And if we do that and take away who they are, they're doing an all right job at the moment with a brand new group of players. But will it change? Probably not. So we'll have to put up with it. But yeah, an interesting one, and probably one that won't go away, James. I'd imagine it'll be stuff that we'll have to continue to read on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter and all that. Right, last one on Facebook comes from Matt Dixon, and he asks, what is my most memorable away day? For him, it was Scunthorpe away in 99-2000. Lights died, hour delay, Super Bob scored his last goal for the football club in a 4-1 win, and we got in at 5 AM, but no one cared. I do remember that, actually, that game. I didn't go. I think Lionel Perez was in goal, wasn't he, for Scunthorpe? They'd signed him from Sunderland. He'd been in the Premier League this season or two before, unless I've just completely made that up. So, yeah, if anyone can get back to me, if you can find out who the goalkeeper was that night when Bob Taylor scored in that 4-1 win for Scunthorpe, and if it was Lionel Perez, then to me. Preston was good all them years ago when we went up there for the first leg of the playoffs, drew 1-1, Super Bob Taylor scored a poor equaliser, in fairness. I think it was David Lucas was the Preston keeper at the time. He was a really good goalkeeper and he let one through his hands and helped us pick up an away draw, and we come back and won the second leg courtesy of Andy Hessenthaler, and we was on our way to Wembley. Before that, Notts County away, I think was the final away game of that same season where we'd confirmed that we were in the playoffs, and we went up there and took a couple of thousand at least and won 1-0 thanks to Carla Sabra, and it was just a great day out, a big party in the away end and proper old school football ground that sadly isn't in the Football League at the moment and should be. Recent ones, Portsmouth, 2 years out of the last 3, missed this year unfortunately, like I've said, because of this sodding knee surgery, but the last 2 years at Portsmouth prior to that have been absolutely brilliant. No one will ever forget Tom Eves' goal. No one will ever forget the 3-1 come from behind win the season before when Connor Wilkinson scored an absolute worldie for me, and it still should have been goal of that season. Luton away last season, we were absolutely phenomenal and could have beaten them. I think they were unbeaten in about 30 at home, and we had a right go and we scored 2 really good goals that day. And going back to Lee's question about vlogging, we got some of the very best goal reactions that we've had on the channel, luckily, that day, especially after Luke O'Neill's sumptuous free kick to level it up at 2-2. Bristol City a few years ago was a 0-0, but it was a decent 0-0, and we were absolutely spot on defensively in a game that resembled the Alamo. Tottenham was a great night out, despite the fact that we pretty much rolled over and had our bellies tickled. So yeah, there's been a few, and hopefully there'll be a few more, but not at the moment for me, unfortunately, because I'm hobbling about on crutches. But yeah, if other people can let us know their favourite away days, that'd be great as well. And right, that is Facebook questions done. And last but not least, before I finish up, final one on Twitter is from Gary Myersco, friend of the channel, friend of the podcast, general potty mouth. You can find him at LilG6978, I think it is, on Twitter, if you want to go and follow him. Is there more suitable captains than Max Amar? I love him as a player and a centre-back, but I'm not sure he's skipper material. It's a tricky one, I think, and it's a good question, Gary, because when he was given it a couple of years ago under Adi Pennock, he admitted at the end of that season, when I spoke to him for the channel, that he wasn't ready, that he didn't really want it. But he only really took it because Adi and his staff wanted a centre-back rather than a centre midfielder as captain. But it definitely affected his performances that time around, and I think he's big enough to admit that he was probably poor for the most part when he was wearing the armband in that season. And that's no disrespect to Max, because it was a poor season from everyone and no one was any good for the most part, and we were struggling. And you know, when you're low on confidence, then performances become harder to get right. And he spoke very honestly and very openly about that at the Priestfield when we had a chat a couple of springs ago. Is he more ready for it now? 100%. Is there better candidates? I'm not sure, because he wears the armband, so we're not seeing anyone else wear the armband. I suppose if you wanted me to look through the squad and think of suitable candidates, then you'd point at probably Stuart O'Keefe, who I think is vice-captain now and has worn it in games when Max Amar's not played, in the leasings.com and the Carabao Cup or whatever he's played in. Barry Fuller, he's done it before, vast experience. But aside from that, are there many candidates? Jack Bonham, you'd probably say not quite old enough. Is he vocal enough to be a captain? Tom O'Connor's young. Conor Ogilvy's young. Who else plays? Alfie Jones is very young. I suppose you could say Mark Byrne could be a candidate for captain. He's, 30 now? Plenty of games for us, plenty of games at this level, plenty of experience. But the bottom line is we don't see what Steve Evans and Paul Rayner and all that see in training every single day. And I don't agree with captains having to be loud and bellowing at every single player. I think different players have different styles, and different captains have different styles. And you might have one, your old school Tony Adams type who's yelling at everyone all the time, and you might have others that are slightly more modern day, dare I say it, that are talk to people next to them, and people that are next to him will then pass on that message to the people next to them. So the same message is getting around the pitch, it's just in a slightly different method. In terms of Max's performance this season, and do I think it's being affected? No, I think Max generally on the whole has been pretty solid. He's played over 200 games now for us since arriving permanently in 2015. And for me, I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times, you don't play that many games under that amount of different managers for one club if you're not half decent. And I think he'll go on to pass 300 appearances for us, because he's still only, 27, 28. And whether that's as captain or not remains to be seen. But for now, I'm more than happy for Max to be leading us out on a Saturday and a Tuesday. And till I see something that completely changes my mind, I've got no issue with it. But you can never have enough captains or too many captains. And I think the likes of the Stuart O'Keefes and the Mark Burns and the Barry Fullers are natural leaders anyway. And they're all out on the pitch and they don't need to wear an armband to be screaming and shouting and offer encouragement or whatever. So I don't think it's as big a deal as maybe we do make out as fans at times. But no, in terms of Max Amar being captain, I haven't got an issue with it. Would I have an issue if Barry Fuller was wearing the armband? No. Would I have an issue if Stuart O'Keefe was wearing the armband? No. What I would say is that we have to have a captain that's in the team on merit, not just because he is the club captain. So if Max Amar's out of form, then someone else wears it and Max Amar drops to the bench. And I'm sure Max is big enough and ugly enough to admit that himself. And if Stuart O'Keefe's not playing well, then he don't play and he doesn't wear the armband, because you can't just put people in for the sake of it. So I hope that answers your question. Right, that is enough from me. I hope I have not waffled on for too long and you've enjoyed listening to my answers. As always, thanks for everyone that got involved. We'll try and do another one maybe just after Christmas at the sort of 25 game stage and have another look. You know where we are, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and Instagram. As always, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I am going to go and take some more painkillers and collapse on the sofa. Hopefully I'll be back Thursday with Boz for a match preview, looking ahead to what will be a tough game on Saturday against Peterborough, and fingers crossed, and if I take enough medication, hopefully I will be at the Priestfield for a match day live on Saturday. But until next time, up the Gills.